Okay, good. So let's start again. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalatu wassalamu ala Muhammadin wa alihi tayyibin at-tahirin. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilman. So assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to this webinar by the Academy of Learning Islam. And the topic for today is understanding and coping with depression. So let's begin. So the agenda for today is we will talk about what exactly is depression. Is it the same as a sad mood, or is there something more to it? We'll talk a little bit about what causes depression, because this seems to be an area which causes quite a bit of confusion. People sometimes blame themselves or don't know what's going on. So we will talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the treatment options. And when I'm talking about the treatment options, I will only be covering ones that are quote unquote the gold standard treatment options. In other words, there are many options for treating depression, but again, the idea is that only some of them have been validated by rigorous research, and we will only be sharing that. And then lastly, I would like to spend some time on building a toolkit for emotional well-being. So this means that we, this will be the self-help kind of area. This will be the area where what can we do for ourselves to build our emotional resilience. So it's beyond depression, right? It's talking about how we can focus on emotional well-being and the things that we can do for ourselves. And these are, they're very empowering, because all of us, whether or not we are suffering from depression, we can take steps to build on our emotional well-being. So that's the general outline. And obviously, we will see how it goes. I'm obviously welcome questions at any point. This was a kind of a difficult webinar to prepare for, because if you've heard before, I tend to be quite interactive, and I welcome comments and suggestions, reflections. But for some reason in this presentation, when I was working on it, I couldn't find really a space for audience interaction, and it's challenging for me, and obviously for my audience as well, to hear a straight presentation for the whole time. But I will obviously, if you have questions in the meantime, I see that the chat has really been updated on any meeting, so it's much easier to read, which is good. So please feel free to jump in, and if you would like more clarification on something, just go ahead. Okay. So let's begin. First of all, what is depression? Depression is a mental illness whose symptoms are feelings of severe sadness, despondency, and dejection. So it's a little bit more than just feeling down for a day or two, right? And the thing with depression is that it can really decrease a person's ability to function at work and at home. In other words, the low mood goes well beyond just, if you're at home and not doing anything, feeling upset. It's much more than that. It's also, we need to know that it is a very common, but just because it's common, it does not mean that it's not serious. It is a serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. And these three things are important to know, because when we talk about what we can do, again, think of it this way, that if it's the thinking, the feeling, and acting, in terms of helping ourselves, we can intervene at any one of those 3 points, right? Feelings are actually, directly, they're harder to change, but we can definitely have some control over the way we think and the way we act. Okay. So there are many types of depression. Let's take the last three first. Okay. So the seasonal depression is seasonal affective disorder. Many people may have heard of that. And for those of us living in North America, or where days are very short in the Western Hemisphere, in the winter, it is a very, very common thing that people feel down or sad when it's winter. And according to what experts believe, this is mostly because of the lack of sunlight, because sunlight affects our well-being, it affects our mood, and when we have low exposure to sunlight over the season, it is very common to get depressed. Obviously, this is also it's very easily treatable, this kind of depression, because if you get a light, you can get lights which mimic sunlight, and they are actually they're very, very effective in treating this. The other kind of depression that obviously women suffer from is postpartum depression, and this is because of the hormones that go, off balance just after we've given birth. And again, postpartum depression is it usually goes away, after say 4 months or so. If it lasts longer than that, then obviously we need to take some, we need to treat it in some way. The last thing, the fourth thing I have here is bereavement. And it is important to understand that many times we think bereavement is depression, but it's actually not. So grief is a very strong emotion. It may not be a pleasant emotion. And at the same time, it is not depression. So it is appropriate to feel grief and bereavement after we have had a major loss. And this does not only mean the loss of life. So it's not only passing away of someone. When we change homes, for example, when we move countries, we've left everything that we know behind. Or there's the end of a relationship through divorce. It's a very common form of bereavement. Or, if you've had a major relationship upset, a major trauma, all of these things, it is, just to put it in perspective, it is quite normal, quote unquote, and normal I'm using that with some caution. 2 years to get back to not even your old normal, but a new normal. Because if you've had a major change of life, part of that is that we're not going to get back to the way things were. And we need to come to terms with that. And that, what psychologists say, that it can take up to 2 years. And that is not uncommon. It is not something to treat as such. You can get help and support for sure, but it's not an illness. Okay, so the thing that's left is the major depressive disorder, which I have on the top here. And this is the most common form of depression. And we need to know that just feeling down even 1 or 2 days a week, you will not be diagnosed. That doesn't mean you cannot help yourself. Okay, so again, we're first going to be talking about treatment, quote unquote. And then, in the second half, we will really look at self-help and how we can do things to build our emotional resilience. Okay. So in order to be diagnosed with depression, you need to be feeling these things for at least 2 weeks at a stretch. And the feelings that are common are sad or hopeless, lacks focus in life on a daily or almost daily basis for the most part of each day. Many other symptoms affect emotional, social, professional, and other significant areas of life. So how common is it? It is said about 1 in 10 Canadians will experience an episode of major depressive disorder during their lifetime. And again, this is only the people who, show up for treatment and who, this is what the doctors see. Of course, there are many other people who suffer in silence and who do not ever get diagnosed. And in our cultures, it is quite common because there's a lot of shame involved. We often think that if we are feeling down, it is a sign of a lack of faith, and sometimes we're told that. But I can tell you that depression can affect people even who have very strong faith. So there are many, and my goal here is hopefully to have some understanding of where it comes from, so that we for those of us who need help, we can get help and hopefully let go of a little bit of the stigma. So does that make sense? And I'll just pause for a few seconds just to make sure that everyone's still on board and you can still hear me. So does that surprise you that 10% of people, so if you're a family of 10, one of you is likely to just, from the stats, one of you is likely to suffer from major depression during their lifetime. And this obviously refers to um, North America. Okay. So can people still hear? Okay, good. So let's move on. What are the symptoms of depression? So, depression has many symptoms, not only emotional. So, in terms of feelings, the feelings associated with depression are feeling sad, overwhelmed a lot of the time, a lot of guilt. And for us, especially, from our faith background, cultural background, the guilt can be quite overwhelming because not only are we feeling bad, but that at the same time we feel guilty for feeling bad, feel guilty for not being there for our families, not being able to function. Women especially suffer a lot of irritability, and there's we can really discuss why that is, but a lot of it comes from not being able to express what we're feeling, and obviously when we're continuously suppressing what's going on, it shows up as irritability. There's a lot of frustration, a lack of confidence, being unhappy, indecisive, disappointed, and a general feeling of just being miserable. There are also physical symptoms that are associated with depression, and some of them are being tired all the time, really low energy, being sick and run down without any medical reason. There's a lot of headaches, muscle pains, joint pains, which are associated with it, upset stomach all the time, this feeling of your stomach churning, like having a low level kind of anxiety sometimes. um, Sleep problems. So, sleep problems can show up as sleeping too little or sleeping too much. Both of those are problematic. A loss or change of appetite. So, again, the idea that some people stop eating and some people eat a lot. So, as a result of that, there can be a significant weight loss or gain. So, in other words, anything which is very different from your norm, is something to take seriously. Behavior and depression behavior shows up as not going out anymore, just not having the will to do stuff, not even wanting to get out of bed, withdrawing from close family and friends. So again, the idea that keep making connections, takes a lot of energy, emotional and physical. Relying on sedatives or drugs. So a lot of people get addicted to sleeping pills without even knowing that they're really addicted. And these days, obviously, you can get a lot of things off the counter as well, which is kind of something to be aware of, because if you are getting sleeping pills from a doctor, hopefully there will at least be a conversation about what is going on. Not doing usual enjoyable activities. So if it was something that you used to really enjoy, you just don't have the energy or the motivation to do it. And it's very common to have being unable to concentrate. So obviously that's not only a behavioral thing, but also a mental thing, right? So cognitive symptoms, in other words, your mental well-being, very difficult to make decisions, hard to concentrate, you keep forgetting things, and people often report that it is like there is a fog in their mind, that they're thinking in slow motion, and a lot of a lack of confidence, right? Not feeling that you're good at your job. There are, the thinking is a very, very important thing to tackle, because when depression happens, it is very it is associated with what we call cognitive distortions. In other words, not thinking helpfully. So thoughts like I'm a failure, it's my fault, or on the other hand, it's never my fault, nothing good ever happens to me, I'm worthless, life's not living, and people would be better off without me. So these are common thoughts that happen during depression. And again, when we talk about treatments, one thing is to treat it with medication, but it is extremely important to also treat the thoughts, or to deal with the thoughts that are behind the depression, because that actually builds your own well-being, and helps you take care of your mental and emotional state long term. So I'd just like to comment on people would be better off without me. We haven't really discussed suicide, what is called suicide ideation in this webinar, but I do need to tell you that it is very, very important that if you have recurring thoughts like that, or thoughts of death or wanting to end your life, it is extremely important that you get help. Please do not rely on webinars or lectures or books or anything like that to help you. That is a serious, and the idea is that you don't have to live um, with such difficulty. There is help available. And when we talk about treatments, you will see that depression is, for the most part, I would say, I haven't got the exact stats, but I would say I think it's well over 90. I think it's 98% or something of most depression is treatable. And, there's a very small percentage of what we call resistant to treatment. And even then there are treatments available even for that. So the idea is, please get help. Do not suffer in silence. More women than men suffer from depression, and there are many reasons for that. Again, the idea that women tend to be caregivers or supportive people for others, and when you're feeling low yourself, it's very challenging. It is challenging to to play that role. And I always think of it like we're trying to pour water from an empty jug. In other words, if we haven't got anything to give, it's going to make us more run down and depleted. Relationship breakdown. So women tend to react to relationship breakdown in a different way than men. Both men and women, by the way, get depressed if there is a breakdown of relationship. But again, women suffer emotionally, at least visibly, more than men, I would say. Violence or abuse. So obviously women are disproportionately exposed to violence or abuse in the home, and this can definitely lead to depression. Discrimination based on gender or sexuality, infertility, and having a miscarriage, for example. Again, when you have a miscarriage, it's very easy to keep telling yourself that you should be over it and be thankful for the other children you have and all of that, right? And sometimes we don't accept the fact that even if you are grateful, you can still have the feeling of loss. Again, pregnancy, having a baby, and becoming a mother, these are all things that affect your hormones and affect your emotional well-being. And lastly, obviously, menopause is very, very correlated with depressive symptoms, at least in the short term, and it can take a while to settle down. So again, there are things that we can do. We don't need to just suffer in silence. Now let's talk a little bit about what causes depression. So this can be a little bit of a controversial subject, but I'm going to try and stick as much as possible to what is agreed in the literature. So biological factors. In other words, some people are known to be more inclined towards depression, more susceptible, more vulnerable to depression. And this is because they have a family member, a close family member who suffers from depression. So they have what we call a genetic predisposition. Also, again, I would like to give some hope that even if you have a genetic predisposition, there is a lot you can do. It does not mean that it is a life sentence of feeling awful. Psychological factors, this means simply the way you think is obviously a very, very key factor in causing depression. So again, we're not going to cognitive distortions in this webinar, just because they can easily take, it is a whole session on its own. And obviously, if there is a request for it, we can, do it inshallah at some point. Environmental factors. So environmental factors means, your surroundings. Obviously, if you are in a very challenging situation, it can really wear your emotions down, and it can really wear down your resilience. Burying emotions. This tends to be a little bit controversial, and this is the one thing I will tell you, that it is not so agreed at least in the medical literature. But there is some, a lot of good, solid theory that not expressing what is happening to you, not being in touch, not being emotionally intelligent, can really lead to depression. So, for example, if you have felt resentment in a relationship for a long time, but you haven't dealt with it, you haven't even admitted to yourself, and you've just sort of stuffed it down, buried it, things like that can really either lead to depression or to physical sickness, because negative emotions not treated will lead to disease. It's doctors may not tell you that, and a lot of medical professions though are. In fact, the website of the Center for Disease Control, which is a very mainstream kind of organization, even on their website, they say that 85% of diseases have an emotional component. So we'll talk about how to deal with emotions in a bit. Abuse or trauma. So if you've had significant abuse or trauma, either ongoing or even in the past. So even if you've had trauma in the past, a lot of people that we treat for depression have a history of sexual abuse, physical abuse. Again, when we don't deal with those emotions, or the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder that comes out of that, it can lead to depression. Poverty is associated with depression. In other words, again, if you are struggling to meet your day-to-day needs, if your general life is so challenging, it can be a risk factor for depression. Another thing is substance abuse. So this is again, in the literature, people are not clear. So it can be both a cause and an effect. What do I mean by that? So if you abuse substances, for example, drugs, alcohol, even prescription medication, a lot of them have side effects, and one of the side effects is depression. However, depression also causes substance abuse, right? So if you're depressed, you're more likely to reach for substances to make yourself feel better. Both of these things, again, are related to abuse and trauma. So if you have abuse or trauma, or a big environmental issue in your life, you are more likely to abuse substances, and then you are more likely to be depressed. So again, they are a lot of these causes are interrelated. It's not, they're not so separate. Let's talk a little bit about lifestyle, and we'll talk about this more when we're talking about building our emotional resilience. So lifestyle, food, it's called the MAD, which is the modern American diet. There's quite a bit of research coming out which shows that what we are eating is greatly impacting our emotional well-being, not only physical. Or the very sedentary lifestyle is also associated with depression. Some people will say that not moving your body is actually like taking a depressant, not an antidepressant, but a depressant. It's that that important. Then there is technology. Technology is two things. One is screens. So being all the time on screens does cause an emotional low. And it's not only what you see, but it's the radiation from the screens that comes, especially, and another thing, when we are on screens all the time, especially in the night, the blue light impacts our melatonin production, which impacts our sleep. And again, when we don't sleep enough, when we are on screens late at night, it can really cause a low mood. So that's, again, something easy that we can do. Then I've put news under technology because obviously most of us access news via technology in the sense of watching the news. Um, when we watch the news all the time, it is actually very highly correlated with depression. Let me give you an example. So they did a study on the people who, the Boston bombing, right, which was only a couple of years ago. And when they did a study on people who were at the bombing and compared it to those people who had watched the Boston bombing on TV for about 6 hours, and it is common when a big thing happens, if you're addicted to CNN or any other news channel, it will keep playing the same role again and again. A few weeks later, they found that the people who had watched the Boston bombing had higher levels of PTSD, which is post stress traumatic disorder, than the people who were actually at the bombing. This is really important to know. So many people, say that they watch the news the last thing at night, or if they're watching, say, a series on Netflix or something, and it is very violent, those things stay with you. They don't go away. So, just being careful of what we're injecting into our consciousness, right? It's not, we tend to be very careful on eating halal, for example, and sometimes even health wise. But we need to really expand that consciousness into what we are taking into our being, into our consciousness through our eyes, through our ears, all of this, because it does impact us. And again, there is quite a lot of research coming out that this is not just a talk, but there's some evidence behind it. So, what are your treatment options if you are suffering? And before we go there, just and again, I'd like to pause for a minute to see if anyone has any questions or would like any clarifications for what we've discussed up to now. Okay, so then let's talk about treatment options. And there are many, many, many treatments available for depression. I have only picked the ones that are quote unquote gold standard. In other words, gold standard are those treatments, I mean, I'm calling them gold standard, but gold standard are those treatments which have many, more than 2 or 3 good, solid studies, well respected behind them. Okay, and just because we need to choose in some way, right? So I'm just going to share those. And so the first is psychological interventions, in other words, also called talk therapy. In other words, seeing a counselor, seeing a therapist, and working with them. So the most common and most researched one is CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. It has a lot of research to show that it actually works. And, just to let people know, those of us who are in Canada, who are in Toronto, we have Jaffrey Support Services, and one of the therapists there is trained in CBT, and so we can offer that to our community. The next one is MBCT, which is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. Again, a very well-researched gold standard therapy. And, sometimes people say that I will only go to a Muslim therapist. But if you are struggling and you cannot find a Muslim therapist who is trained in these things, please seek help from wherever you can find it. Any good therapist can offer you good quality therapy, and it does not have to, they can work within your faith system. So many people are concerned that somehow they will say things which are against your faith. But, being trained in the West myself, I can tell you that a good therapist will take your own faith background into account. So please do not let that stop you. The other two, which are not that common, behavior therapy is quite common actually, but interpersonal therapy, again, these are just different names. The takeaway from here is that talk therapy, working with a therapist who you trust, who you have a good relationship, can greatly help with symptoms of depression. What are medical interventions? Obviously, the most common and well-researched one is medication. There are some others, but let's just stick to medication for the time being. And again, to put it into perspective, I used to be quite against medication. And I used to think that, we should be able to help ourselves. And what I have learned over the years is that some people actually do really well with medication. The idea, the one caution is that even if you are taking antidepressant medication, two things. First of all, it's really important to be under medical care, like to work with a doctor. So, say you go to the doctor and you get antidepressants, please do not skip on the follow-ups, because depending on what you're taking, sometimes it can take a while to work. Some of them do have negative side effects. They may not work for you. So it is a trial and error kind of thing until you get settled into something that works for you. So when you are on antidepressants, please make sure to work with a doctor, and to also supplement that with talk therapy. What antidepressants don't do, they will treat your depression, they will make you feel good. And in fact, some people, when they come for therapy, they're not really capable of engaging in therapy until they are more stable emotionally and mentally, right? So antidepressants are a really good support in the short term while you are working with a therapist. The therapist will teach you long-term management for yourself. So in an ideal world, if you were depressed, you would go to a doctor, get medication, and work with a therapist to help you develop a plan so that you can eventually get off the antidepressants. So the idea is that, okay, if you're on antidepressants for 6 months and you get off them, you haven't, and that's the only thing you've done, you haven't really gained any skills to manage yourself. And this is what the research shows as well, right? That when for long-term management, people who take antidepressants, get off them, and haven't really learned anything, they haven't learned to do anything different, have a chance of relapse. And the relapse can be quite often, like it's quite common to relapse on depression. If you have had CBT and medication, your chances of relapse significantly decrease. So the idea is that the CBT or MBCT teaches you the skills to manage your own emotional state, eventually, inshallah, without medication. So hopefully that, that makes it clear. Now, what are some of the complementary and lifestyle interventions? Light therapy. As I said, for seasonal affective disorder, light therapy is very effective and it's very reasonable. You have to basically buy a lamp and sit under it, or have it in the room for a few hours a day. Bibliotherapy. What is bibliotherapy? Bibliotherapy is basically reading a book, educating yourself about what are your options and how to manage. However, bibliotherapy, what's been studied is bibliotherapy with a professional. In other words, you read the book and then you discuss it with your therapist. The book that has been researched very highly and comes with, again, a lot of studies is a book called Feeling Good by David Burns. And, what was very exciting about this book, it was published many years ago, but it only became a bestseller, 8 years after it was published. But what is very exciting is that simply giving that book to people on a wait list, while they were waiting for therapy, and they went through the book, they read it, they did the exercises. When their names were, called off the waiting list, they reported that they did not need the therapy. And this was quite a big number, like more than half, I think, of the people who read the book said that they did not need intervention anymore, that they were okay. So again, this is very, very hopeful for us, that if we can help ourselves by reading a book, obviously just reading it probably won't do it, right? You have to do the exercises, and it's a long book and it has many exercises. So, that is one way. It is obviously very cost effective. It does take time and it takes effort. So, but it's hopeful to know, right? And now let's go on to self-help. What are some of the things that we can do to help ourselves? And again, when we're talking about self-help, we are talking about long-term emotional well-being. I will say it again, that when we are in a crisis, right? If you're feeling really low and we cannot function, for example, it's a really good idea to seek help from a professional, from a doctor. And at the same time, we need to build our own emotional resilience so that long term we can take care of ourselves. When we're talking about self help, it also goes beyond depression, which can be diagnosed. So, the things that we're going to be talking about now are things that we can do whether or not we qualify for a major depressive disorder. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened, but I think the internet went off for a bit. So, can people hear me now? Okay, good. So, the name of the book is Feeling Good. I'm sorry, maybe I didn't even mention it. It's called Feeling Good, the New Mood Therapy by David Burns. That is the name. And it's easily available online. Okay. So, let's talk now about self help. Overcoming depression, what can we do? So, first of all, we need to take care of ourselves. What happens with depression or with just feeling down is that we lose the fundamentals. And, a lot of research shows that the fundamentals, taking care of ourselves, really does affect our mood. So, what we eat, again, the modern American diet, MAD, has known to really result in low mood. A high sugar intake, a high, when we eat junk food, for example. And another thing which was very interesting to find out was that, serotonin, which is the feel good hormone, we think that we make it in our brains. It turns out that more serotonin is created in our gut than in our brain. Let me say that again. More serotonin is created in our gut than in our brain. So it is a really good idea if you suffer from low mood. And again, now we're talking not only about depression, but just feeling down, not feeling your best. Okay. It's a really good thing to look at your diet. So some things will result in a better, when you eat a lot of greens, for example, chlorophyll, we know that that results in clearer thinking. When we are eating a lot of grains, especially wheat, it can really, for some people who may be susceptible or sensitive to wheat or to gluten, which is extremely common in North America. And, we won't go into why or whatever. But again, removing those things from your diet can significantly impact your mood. Moving. Again, the idea that a sedentary lifestyle is highly correlated with depression. So both when we are not moving, we are not, it's a lack of motivation. There's many, many things that are associated with with a feeling of low mood, right? And the lower energy you have, you don't feel like moving, but when you move, you actually have more energy. So what does moving mean? A lot of times we think that going to the um, gym for 1 hour a week is enough, or even 2 or 3 hours a week. However, what people are saying now is that you can go to the gym and still have, you can be a fit, um, you can have a fit but sedentary lifestyle. In other words, if you work at a computer for most hours of the day and then you go to the gym for 3 hours a week, that is not enough. It is much better to do a little bit of exercise or just simply movement. Don't even think of it as exercise, moving your body for every single day. So again, a thing like a Fitbit, the thing that you wear on your wrist, which measures your steps, is actually a really good idea because first of all, it motivates you, it keeps track. And whenever you keep track of anything, that tends to get better. So, this is just like a quick trip. Anything that you are struggling with, whether it's your weight, whether it's your thoughts, when you start keeping track of them, you write them down or you measure them in some way, the way the human mind works is that you will get more, that will improve. So a Fitbit also helps in another way in that we have a target. Now, having targets, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but having a goal to achieve greatly motivates and it improves your mood. So, for example, and one more thing I'd like to comment on this is setting some goals which are so easy that you cannot fail. So, in terms of movement, sometimes, and especially if you're feeling down, what happens is that we think that we need to either go to the gym 3 times a week or why bother, So we think that moving, taking a few steps before dinner or after dinner or doing a few jumping jacks is not good enough. However, this is just the kind of thinking that keeps us stuck. When we really lower the bar, in other words, if we are sitting on the computer for 6-7 hours a day, that's our work. If we set a goal or a reminder on our phone that every hour we will go, we will walk around the house, or if it's cold, we will walk inside the house. We will just do a few jumping jacks. The idea is to make it so, the whole thing, movement about mini habits, mini goals, having it so low that you cannot fail. So, what I recommend to my clients is that before you get into the shower, just do 5 jumping jacks. Before you get, as soon as you get out of bed in the morning, do 5 jumping jacks or do, a 30-second plank or just do some, just walk as much as you can. So walk while, sometimes now when I meet people, I will say, let's just walk and talk at the same time, instead of just sitting. Why not? Moving has so many benefits. And again, it's highly correlated with emotional mood. So again, when I am dealing with clients who have mood disorders, exercise becomes almost, a wajib. Like you have to move in order to feel better. And of course, the challenge is that it's hard to move when you're feeling low. But again, when you set mini goals, you say, okay, right now I'm not taking any steps. Why don't I start with 50 steps a day? And so again, getting back to the Fitbit, this whole idea about 10,000 steps. So I know for myself, for example, I work, most of the time I'm writing or preparing or working with clients, there's not much movement. And when I think of 10,000 steps, it's almost impossible for me to do. When you're not completing your goals, you feel worse. When you feel worse, you're much less likely to do it. So it's like not a good idea. When I said, okay, forget the 10,000, I'm actually going to focus on 5,000 a day. Then what happens? 5,000 is doable. I can actually achieve it. When I achieve it, I feel more motivated. I'm likely to do 6 and then 7, right? So the idea to set such small goals that you cannot fail is a really good idea to work on your emotional well-being. Again, it's a way to build your own emotional resilience. What happens when you're feeling down is that when it's very easy to get demotivated and you have a lack of confidence, and when you set goals for yourself that are too high, you when you fail, you feel worse, and the worse you feel, the less likely you're to do, right? So on the other hand, especially even if you're working with a therapist, when you're setting goals for yourself for treatment, talk to them about this. Say that I would like to set goals that are at this point easy for me to achieve, and when I achieve them, then you feel good and you want to do more. Pray. So again, obviously, in our faith, connection to God, Allah tells us in the Quran, right, that Allah zikrillahi Allah bi zikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. There is no tranquility in the heart except with connection to God. So prayer has to be a very key part of our self-care. And again, when we're feeling down, most people, what they report is that they find it difficult to connect. They cannot, they find it difficult to pray. And again, the idea, um, so again, I'll give you an example of somebody I was working with recently. And this is what she said, that, when I pray, I just don't feel connected to God. And I said, okay, what else are you doing in life? And I know this person, she's quite an outdoor person. She cycles, she bikes to work, for example, right? So I said, when you bike to work, do you look at the sky? Do you look at the surroundings? Because she lives in a very beautiful part of the world. And I said, do you look at the mountains? Do you look at what's happening around you? And she said, obviously. I said, when you look at your baby, um, do you feel awe? Do you feel grateful for Allah having given her to you? And she said yes to all of those things. And I said, that is your connection. We need to move beyond this idea that if we are not praying for hours a day, it means that we're not connected to God. When we start connecting to God in every minute of our day, and one of the very amazing ways to do that is through nature. It's a form of prayer. The any time that you see something and connect that blessing to God, it is a form of prayer. Again, I'm saying this on a personal level. And so when we stop telling ourselves this, when we're telling ourselves all the time that we're not connected, we're less likely to be connected. When we begin recognizing all the ways in which we are connected to God. So when we're eating, for example, if we say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and just for that moment, we pause for just a second and connect to God with the idea that He is the source of all food, of all risks that we've been given, that is a form of prayer. When we start living life in this way, then when we're on the musalla, when we are in dua, we are much more likely to be connected. So, but if we spend our whole time that we're off the musalla telling ourselves how we can't connect, it's less likely that we will be connected when we are when we are actually in a ritual prayer. Does that make sense to people? Sleep. So, self-care fundamentals, it is extreme, when you are continuously sleep deprived, and we talked about how technology and everything else impacts sleep, right? When we are continuously sleep deprived, even if you're not depressed, you will feel emotionally low. You will feel irritated. You will not feel at your best. And again, what research shows is that many people in North America are not getting the sleep that they need on a daily basis because of many reasons. We have too much stimulation. It is said now that according to research, the amount of stimulation that we get in 2 weeks is more than our ancestors had in their entire lives. Obviously, when we are so stimulated all the time with things that are happening, so we're never alone, we're never by ourselves. There is always, we're either listening to something, watching something, connecting to our phones several times a day. Some people, some research shows that up to 200 times a day, people are checking their phones, right? All of these things impact our emotional well-being, our mental well-being, and certainly our sleep. When we check our phone the last thing at night, when we watch something the last thing at night, it does impact not only the amount we sleep, but the quality of sleep. So a really good rule of thumb is to have what is called a digital sunset. In other words, not to go on technology, to stay away from technology for at least the minimum 2 hours before you sleep. So, and again, this is not going to happen overnight. It is very challenging to do if we are, given that most of us are addicted. So, again, take it slow. Start with 30 minutes before bedtime, and the aim to be to build it up to 2 hours before bedtime. If you stay away from technology, your sleep quality will improve. Again, if you are having trouble sleeping, and when we are feeling low, the idea that we can sleep either too little or too much, but when you are sleeping too little, don't suffer in silence. There are things available, both natural and medical, that can help you in the short term. And when you fix your sleep patterns, then everything else becomes easier to manage. So most people, like in terms of procrastination, for example, the reason why most people do not complete what they set out to do is because they're tired, because they haven't had sleep. So when you have slept enough, I always say that the world looks like a better place in the morning. Right? Connect. And I've put this as part of self-care because connecting to other human beings is extremely important for our emotional well-being, emotional, mental, and physical well-being. So a lot of research out right now that one of the key predictors, by the way, of longevity, of how long you will live, is not whether you smoke, is not whether you eat healthy, is not even whether you exercise. The single biggest predictor of longevity for people is their social connections and the quality of their relationships. This was very surprising to me, at least, when I read the research, but it has been, it's pretty solid, at least scientific evidence that people who are lonely, who are disconnected from others in their life, are more likely to struggle with mental and emotional health. So how do we connect with people? Again, it starts with very small things. When we are sad or depressed or lonely, we go into what Barbara Fredrickson, a key positive psychology researcher, she calls it a cocoon of self-absorption. In other words, we become very internalized, and we are not looking outwards at all. And when we do that, we are more likely to feel worse rather than better. So connecting with others can be as simple as when you are at the grocery store and you're in the checkout line, just look up to the woman who is checking out your groceries and greet her and just connect with her for a moment. When you're picking up your dry cleaning, don't be on your phone. Just actually, take just a moment to connect. So again, connections do not have to be major. You don't have to spend hours with someone. They can be added into things that you're already doing in your life. It can be very, very simple. And again, when we connect with people on this, for those of you who are readers of my daily wisdom blog, we spent a lot of time on this, right? Almost a month on talking about building love, and that's the same exact thing, building connections with other human beings. So having a supportive circle of family and friends obviously is also very important. So those were the fundamentals. What else can we do towards emotional well-being? And now we're talking more generally, that is not only about depression. And before we do that, let's just stop for a moment again to see if there were any questions. and um, if anything needs to be clarified. So we have a very quiet audience today. Okay, so let's talk about. Did you mention that not to eat junk food and eat healthy food? Yes, exactly. Especially if you're struggling with mood, one of the easiest things to um, to fix, and easiest when I say simplest, not maybe easy for the person who's doing it, but simplest way is to again think of all that we can do for ourselves, right? And clearing out junk food and eating healthy, eating more fruits and vegetables and whole food, real food can help, especially nuts, like for example walnuts, for example, right? Things like that have increase our emotional and mental well-being. So why not take care of the easy stuff first before we move on to the challenging thing. And the idea is that even when you're working with a therapist or you are on medication, these things are going to build your emotional well-being in the long term. So while medication will help you stabilize and give you motivation to do these things, it is important to also look at the uh, at the things that we can do for ourselves. Okay. How much to move? If not 3 hours a week at gym is not enough. So like I said, that the gym is a good thing. I'm not knocking the gym. What I'm saying is that if you're sitting for the rest of all the time and you're just going to the gym for 3 hours a week, that may not be enough to shift your emotional and mental state, right? If you can add movement to your day every single day, mm, just walking, just being more active in the house or outside, or just being conscious of how much you're sitting is what I'm talking about. There's again so much research coming out on how the human body, when we sit, there's actually, I think it's a book called Sitting Kills and Moving Heals. So, according to this theory, and this expert, what she believes is that sitting for so many hours a day is what is causing a lot of the physical problems in modern life. So, again, moving simply means not being sitting. When you're not sitting and when you're not lying down, you are moving. So even if you can, like right now as I'm presenting this webinar, I'm actually standing, I'm not sitting, because sitting for an hour and a half, I have going through several health issues anyway, and sitting has become almost impossible for me. So just standing and taking a few steps here and there is better than being sitting all the time. You will notice the difference yourself. So if for the next week, everyone just makes experiment, just do an experiment for noticing how much you're sitting. And so for example, even if you're watching TV and there's an ad, during the ad, you can just get up and do a few jumping jacks. So just take a few steps, not to the fridge, which is what we normally do to get some snacks, but to just move around, while the thing is going on, do something, just get up is the idea. So now let's talk about emotional well-being. The most important thing, let's see this. I do set goals, but after a few days, I give up on those goals and make new goals. Is this normal? It is extremely normal in the sense that most of us, when we set goals, we do. It's hard for us to follow through. If you would like some more help in that, I have a whole series that we did in January on goal setting and how to make it easier. They're very simple. They're very short because the emails that I sent out and send out every day, Monday to Friday, they're meant to be read in 2 minutes or less. and they're action oriented. So if you go to the blog, and I have a link to it on the last slide, it's on marziahasan.org. And if you just search goals, there will be a lot of short blogs that are for goal setting, both last year and this year. So I tend to generally spend January on goals. So hopefully that will help as well. So coming back to the simple practices for emotional well-being, the first one is to watch your thoughts. Again, all of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and also MBCT, which is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, the basic thesis of that is that our thoughts create our world. In other words, depressed people think differently than happy people. And in order to change, and by the way, it is possible to change the way we think. The way we think normally is automatic. It is, some people call it automatic negative thinking, which is ANT. And I'm not sure if I have a podcast on this, but we've done a lot of sessions for those of you who have heard in the past about, overcoming negative thinking. But the idea is that when we begin to become conscious of our thoughts, number one, and number two, that we stop believing all the thoughts that we have. So the idea is that the way, all of us have thoughts. That's normal. We have more than 66,000 thoughts or something a day. Most of them are repetitive and most of them are negative. However, when we become conscious of our thoughts, so let's take an example. Say I go into, say I move into a new town. Okay, I've just moved, and what I've heard about this community is or what I carry with me, the belief that, these people, they are very cliquey. They don't like newcomers. They don't like people from my part of the world. And they are snobbish. They are rich, whatever my thoughts would be. Okay. The thing is, when I go into into an event where these people are present and these are the thoughts that are running through my head, guess how I'm going to behave? Am I going to be open and friendly and want to make connections? No, because I already have the thought and the belief that they're not going to want to be friends with me, right? So this is the way our thoughts actually, bring into life what happens to us. On the other hand, if I was to think that, I've heard that these people are really friendly and they welcome newcomers and they're especially interested in meeting people from my part of the world, then I'm more likely to be open. I'm more likely to make attempts to connect with other people. Now, none of these thoughts are really based on reality, right? They're just figments of my imagination. And most of our thoughts are. The way we think is not really based on reality. It is based on our conditioning. It's based on many different things. So when we become really good at watching our thoughts, at recognizing that these thoughts are not real and that I can actually choose different thoughts, I can challenge the thoughts that I'm having, it has a huge impact. I mean, this is probably the greatest thing that we can do for ourselves, is not to believe everything we think and to choose more helpful interpretations of whatever is happening around us. Obviously, this is a huge subject. And by the way, the book Feeling Good, it goes through a lot of the cognitive distortions, and it talks a lot about, how to change your thinking step by step. And obviously, if people wanted to do a session on that, I would be happy to do that. So here is the, if you are doing CBT, for example, this is something that you will encounter. So how are thoughts, emotions, and behavior linked? Now, emotions, let's talk about how we feel first, right? How we feel, which is when we feel depressed, impacts how we think and what we do. So if we don't feel like exercising, for example, the behavior will be that we will not exercise. And some of the thoughts around that might be that we will think it's not worth it. I'm in too much pain. It's not going to help. I'll do it tomorrow. So you see how thoughts, emotions, and behavior are all linked. Sometimes we think that when I feel like something, I will do it. So when I feel, for example, if I want to learn something, I'm not ready yet, is a very common thought. I can't afford it. I don't have the time. My children, we have so many reasons, so many thoughts of why we can't do something. And when we begin to recognize that these are just thoughts, and if I actually take a step and say register for something, a class that I want to do, that's a behavior, right? When I do the behavior, then my emotions will change. Sometimes, we really get it wrong. We think that we will do the behavior when we feel like it. But however, behavior also impacts emotions. So when we start exercising, we feel better. When we take action on our goals, we feel better. When we do something which we like, learning to drive. So the most common feeling about learning to drive is I feel scared, I don't have the confidence. So those are the emotion might be fear, the thoughts are it's too scary, I've had an accident in the past, and the behavior is that we don't drive. However, if we realize that, these are just emotions and these are just thoughts, why don't I just why don't I just drive anyway? Why don't I just drive to the supermarket, which is 2 minutes from my home? When I do that behavior, then my confidence, which is an emotion, will increase. My thoughts will be, I can do this. So you see how we can actually intervene in either thought or behavior. We can work at changing our thoughts, but the easiest way to change our thoughts and to change our emotions is actually to do the behavior. So doing the behavior, even though you're scared, even though you have all of those thoughts, is really a key way to changing your life. And again, there's a lot of that I've written on it on the blog. So if you Google confidence, if you search on the blog for confidence, for example, or taking action or baby steps or any of those things, you will come up with uh, some posts about that and some, suggested actions as well. So is this clear? Is there an area that you're struggling with that we could maybe discuss about how you could deal with the thought or the emotion around that, or the lack of behavior? Okay. So for emotional well-being, firstly, we need to also have a bit of a realistic idea of what emotional well-being means. Emotional well-being does not mean that we will not feel sad. Emotional well-being does not mean that we will not feel angry. In fact, happy people, people who are well emotionally, they practice what is called emo diversity. And again, I think I have a blog post on that. But emo diversity simply means that you allow and are okay with all sorts of emotions. So the one key thing to remember about emotions is that feelings come and go. Feelings do not last forever. If we allow a feeling, it will go away by itself. When I say allow, it means that I acknowledge how I'm feeling. So if I'm feeling angry, for example, and I don't acknowledge it, I try to stuff it down, I try to distract myself, I do all of these things, what happens is that it will last longer. Why? Because I am feeding it by trying to resist it and to fight with it. Okay. There is a big difference, though, between feeling the emotion and acting on the emotion. So while I'm saying about, when I'm talking about the idea of feeling anger, I am not saying that it's okay to act on how we are feeling angry. There is a big difference between acknowledging the anger and acting on the anger. It's all feelings are okay. All actions are obviously not okay. Okay. But what happens is that when we become okay, so for example, if I'm feeling anger, if I just take a second to pause and to notice where I am feeling anger in my body, is it in my stomach? Is it in my head? Am I, if I'm very stressed, am I holding it in my shoulder or my neck, or are my muscles tight? If I just take a few moments to notice all of these things and just let it be without doing anything, it will change. So, one of the ways to deal with emotions is to allow and label emotions. So, for example, if I'm feeling angry or upset, if I just get in touch with what's happening inside for just a second and label it. So, say angry, upset, disappointment, um, joy. When I become good at labeling emotions for myself, it really um, is a very important step in not acting out on those emotions, because again, recognizing that emotions are ours. People don't cause emotions, they just reveal them. So if I have a tendency, for example, to feel left out, if my emotion that I feel very often is a feeling of rejection or feeling alone, then people are not causing it. Yes, I will encounter many occasions where I feel that emotion. So when I'm feeling emotions, what happens is I stop blaming other people for causing those emotions, and I just simply let them be and label them. Again, it sounds people are, and then what, and then what. And the idea is, again, that these are practices that take patience, that they take a while. These are not overnight cures. So again, practices for emotional well-being are those, they're practices, in other words, that we need to do them on a regular basis. This is not something, oh, today I'm, give me a tip that will make me happy. It's not like that. Just like, you are healthy as long as you exercise, right? When you stop exercising, you're not going to be healthy anymore. You will regain the weight and whatever. While you're eating well, you will be well. And when you're not eating well, you won't be well. When you are praying, you will be connected. When you're not praying, you will not be connected. These are all things that we need to practice on a daily basis. Just like that, watching your thoughts, watching your emotions is a daily practice. It's not something that you get that you just do once and it's over. And many people who are quote unquote look very calm or look happy, they again, they go through really bad days, they have a lot of negative thoughts, but they have learned how to deal with those negative thoughts, and they have learned how to deal with the emotions. So I'm just going to stop here for a moment and look at the questions. How do you link this with our beliefs about evil eye or nazar? So if you're talking about beliefs, again, and I'm going to guess what you're talking about, because it's quite a general question. So if you're talking about how do I, so nazar or evil eye, again, the idea is to is it stopping me from doing anything? So, for example, if I am successful, if I'm getting a promotion, for example, is it, am I concerned about evil eye or nazar? Again, the idea is that these are thoughts. I have no idea if I have evil eye or nazar, or if people are jealous, right? Those are all figments of my imagination. Is it possible that people will wish me ill or not be happy for my success? Obviously, that is possible, right? And the idea is, what can I do about that? Absolutely nothing. I can try to be a good person, try to be humble in the way I interact with people. And the idea is, am I going to stop myself from succeeding because it might happen? That's where the issue is, right? So that's where we need to be careful. I hope that helps. So, Alhamdulillah, I'm starting my 6-week CBT course. I have been present. Okay. And working. My GP wants me to go for this course first, inshallah. Okay, Alhamdulillah. Yes. So CBT, I'm excited because I'm hoping that you will get a lot out of CBT. And the idea is that if something doesn't work, keep going. There are many, many things that you can do, and the only idea is to just keep hope alive. If antidepressants haven't worked, great, there is CBT. If CBT doesn't work, great, there's MBC, there's mindfulness, there is a lot of different things. Okay. I'm a little okay. What if you want to do something that make us feel better? Like, okay, so sometimes people ask this question, right? That what if I want to do something, and this is something for women in particular, that that you want to do something which you're not being allowed to do. So your husband doesn't want to do it, and obviously this is the belief around that is that I shouldn't do anything without my husband's permission. So I'm very conflicted, and should I do it or not? And this is obviously a difficult question, and I try not to answer religious fiqh questions, because obviously I am you have access to the same information that I do. And the idea is that so this will, more than anything else, this is a relationship issue, right? It is how we approach another person, and uh, and getting through to someone, right? Communication, explaining to them that this is something really important to us, and requesting that they come on board. That is what we can do. Again, sometimes when the way we ask is not, we think that we're being very, and for me too, it's a really good idea to get support, like a good friend or a therapist or someone to talk things over with, a religious person, because they can, when we are in our own heads, when we are in a troubled situation and we think we're doing everything right, but it turns out that we're actually, that we could be doing something better. So the way I ask, if I tell my husband, you never let me do anything, and you never, when I start like that, it's much less likely that I will get permission or that my husband will be on board, right? But if I say, I would like to bring up something, can you, I would like to get your support on this, and this is important for me. It's going to help me become a better wife, a better mother, and it is. So again, the idea that when we, and that's all we can do, right? That is in our circle of control. Can we control other people? No. Can we always convince other human beings? Unfortunately not. And if the situation is that, when we are um, uh, in a situation where everything is being controlled for us, it is a very challenging thing. And at that point, I would say, I should have put this in, but I didn't. I forgot. Um, Self-compassion, to acknowledge that you are in a difficult place, and to give yourself the love and support that you are not getting from others. And again, this is a practice. It's a practice to give kindness to ourselves, to acknowledge that you're in a difficult position. That's very different from blaming everybody else around, because when we're blaming everybody else around, it's a very powerless kind of thing. We are not in our own circle of control because we're waiting for other people to change. When we are giving ourselves the love and respect and compassion that is healing for us, then we are at cause in our own lives. So I hope that helps. Your explanation on acknowledging emotions makes sense. Thank you. How can you take difficult situations easily in your life and be less pessimistic? So again, this is a really good question, and this goes to the same things that we were talking about, right? The idea of the way we think is, it's a habit. pessimism is a habit, and like habits, it is a learned habit, and it can be unlearned. So again, optimism is a way of thinking, pessimism is a way of thinking, and when we practice, simply the first step is to start noticing how you're thinking. If you begin to notice, oh, there goes my mind again, I'm always um, there I go again. And it's again not about making yourself wrong. It is about simply acknowledging that that's where your mind goes. Your mind goes to, when you have a little bit of lightness and compassion where your mind is going, because here's the thing, you're human. And these are all human things, no matter which city I'm speaking in, whether it is in Canada, Florida, Pakistan, Dubai, it is all human beings share certain emotions and certain ways of thinking. And the idea is not to make yourself wrong for it, because here's the thing, when we make ourselves wrong for it, what do we feel, better or worse? We're feeling worse because, first of all, we are feeling bad already. Then, on top of that, our self talk. So I did a whole session on self talk, and it's, for some reason I still haven't put it online, but inshallah, if enough people nag me, I will put it online soon. It is called Managing Your Gremlins, and it is very much related to this, right? Into how we talk to ourselves, the things that we say, and some strategies to explain to help with that, right? Please try your best to come to London. I would love to come to London, so just invite me and I shall be there, inshallah. How do you deal with anger? Should we get angry and get it out, or just keep it in? Is it right or wrong? So again, the idea is not that it is not, right or wrong is a very judgmental kind of thing. And judgments don't make us happy. Judgments about other people or ourselves just don't make us happy. So if we're working on our own emotional well-being, it is much more useful to stay away from the judgment and to simply start noticing, is it helpful or not helpful? If keeping your anger inside, so here's the thing with anger, and again, it's a huge topic, right? So, in fact, the Academy sponsored a 4-week session. It was a live session on anger. And again, the thing is that I'm willing actually to do anything online is really easy. So if there's enough requests, we can always do stuff, right? And the way to keep in touch, again, is if you sign up for the Daily Wisdom newsletter, if you haven't already, and, you email me, message me, we can actually do webinars on many different topics, right? So if the keeping it inside is taking a toll on you, then you need to find ways to express it. And again, expressing it does not mean getting angry and acting out. It means expressing it in a way that is helpful for you and helpful for the other person. Okay. And so again, it's not something that we can discuss within a few minutes, but simply to know that suppressing or stuffing, not even suppressing, but stuffing down anger long term is not good for your health. You need to deal with it in some way. And sometimes, obviously the situation you find yourself in is very toxic that you cannot change it, right? And then in those situations, you need to take steps to work on your own emotional well-being, to work on your own resilience so that you can build that up and, and be healthy. So carrying on, we just have a couple of minutes left. Practicing gratitude. So the practice of gratitude has been known to be extremely helpful in emotional well-being. And obviously, we know in our faith, it's very important. And, also in research, it shows to help. So how do you practice gratitude? A very easy and quick way is to do an exercise called 3 good things. So before you sleep, you simply write down 3 things that went well. And it does not have to be major things. It could be that I found a parking spot at the grocery store. The idea is that when we make this a habit, and again, it's a habit, when we start doing this on a daily basis, whether or not we feel like it really impacts our emotional well-being. And what happens is that when we are practicing gratitude, our brain starts scanning for things that are going right rather than things that are going wrong. Service and volunteering is a very important thing for emotional well-being. When we are sad, we become, like I said, absorbed in our own cocoon, right? And in order to get out of the cocoon, so many people think that volunteering is good for the other person. It turns out, of course, our religion tells us that when we do good, we are doing it for ourselves. That's what the Quran says. And now what research shows is that when we are serving others, when we are doing good to humanity, the benefits that we get emotionally and mentally and also physically are way more than the people who are the recipients of that service or volunteering get, right? So it is actually living the Quran. In other words, what the Quran has told us, centuries ago is now is now being validated by science. Setting goals and achieving them, again, is another simple practice. So setting small goals and achieving them is very, very important for our well-being. We are what is called teleological creatures. Telos, in other words, human beings like to achieve. So the goal can be as simple as, today I will make something new for dinner. Or if that seems too overwhelming, especially if you're feeling depressed, that can be too overwhelming. Okay, today I will take 50 extra steps. That will take you less than 2 minutes, and it's a goal. You write it down and you tick it off. I guarantee you it will add to your emotional and mental well-being. Meditation. So a lot of what we have been talking about is meditation, the idea of getting in touch with our emotions, getting in touch with our thoughts. It is all part of mindful meditation. Sometimes we think that meditation is a very technical thing. I don't know how to meditate. And I always tell people, if you know how to breathe, you know how to meditate. Meditating is simply being silent and looking inwards for a few minutes a day. It is as simple as that. So start with 5 minutes a day. Just pause. Just pause what you're doing. Close your eyes, notice what is going on inside. There is no need to change. There is no need to, your thoughts will wander, your emotions will wander. And the idea is that you're not doing it wrong. That's the nature of the mind. You simply, when you notice that your mind is wandering, you simply bring it back to the breath. It's literally as simple as that. That is all of meditation in 30 seconds explained. Okay, and obviously, again, it's a practice. Meditation has been shown, lots of research behind it, that the minds of meditators become different. So we can actually sculpt our brains. So the brain of a person who's been meditating looks different under scans than a brain of a person who is not meditating. Obviously, coming back to our faith, this is a highly recommended practice in Islam, to reflect, to be silent, to focus. And, basically it's training your attention where you want it to be. And these days, given all the distractions in the world, it's almost a wajib, right? Meditation is something that we need to do in order to bring our attention back to where we want it to be. So, sorry, we went a couple of minutes over, but that's the end of the presentation from my point. What are your main takeaways? What are you going to do differently? This is again not just a question, a random question. When we learn something, it is extremely important to reflect on this question, and this is not just for this course. Anything that you're doing, at the end of it, ask yourself these things. And when you do that, it makes the learning real, it makes it stick, it makes it, you are much more likely to take action on it. So please do take a moment to write. What are you going to do differently? What are your main takeaways? Did anything make sense? And if so, what? When you say what made sense, it helps all of us. Okay, so you're welcome, everyone. And these are the websites and the link for the newsletter, the Daily Wisdom. Like I said, it goes out every Monday to Friday, inshallah, and it's small and action oriented. So please keep in touch. And if you have any feedback, I would really love to hear it. So thank you. You're really welcome, Yasmin. Lovely to have you here. So I'll stick around for just a few moments in case somebody